In just a second.
I think we're on the air.
Oh, we're on the air.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody we're on the air. Oh shit, are we on the air? Oh fuck, we're on the air. Oh hello, I didn't even see you there. What's up everybody? I'm Kayla Marie Coates.
And I'm Captain Ron.
And this is According to Captain Ron's Record, where we talk about the unfiltered, unedited, pure and real take from the perspective of Mr. Captain Ron himself. He shaved his head off, not his head off, his hair off last week, and now he's no longer Guy Fieri. So, welcome back to the land of the living. I mean, not that Guy Fieri's dead, but
That was a mouthful.
It really was. I talk a lot when I'm around my grandpa because he talks a lot. But, that's where I get it from.
But get a word edgewise.
Yeah. Anywho, this week I asked Captain Ron to pick out a record that reminded him of his heritage and culture and that kind of stuff. So, Captain Ron, what record did you pick out?
Well, I picked out some of the least favorite stuff that my fans like to listen to because they had a similar problem to what I had growing up. This is Bonito Veracruz. It's a sample of music that I love from Mexico. The significance of it is, if you'll notice, there's a harp on here and in a different styles of guitar. This style of music is played in the tropics in the Veracruz Peninsula. And this is the kind of music that I wound up loving when I was a kid, even though I didn't know what it was. And there are many styles of Hispanic music. This is just one. Most people are familiar with mariachis. Mm-hmm. They have horns, they have violins, and I think they're more traditionally from the European influence in Mexico. And so my family loves mariachis. You can put that back there. And I listened to a lot of that when I was a kid because they play that kind of music. But I like this kind of music. In addition to the mariachis and the music of the tropics, like this, there's also border music. Tejano music, the music from the Texas borders and the north borders of Mexico. And that's a totally different type of music. It's more like dance music, polkas and fun. And so this is, though, the kind of music that was reminded of me when Kayla asked me something that reminded me of my heritage, this type of music. So since she asked me about this, I thought another thing I could talk about today about my history and who I am is my Spanish culture and what Spanish culture I actually have versus what Spanish culture I don't have. And that, I think, requires explanation because let's start when I was a little child and going to grammar school. When I started going to grammar school, all of the kids spoke English. And I never noticed it before, but also I spoke English. I never spoke Spanish when I went to grammar school. It didn't occur to me till later why. My mother always spoke to me in English. She very rarely ever spoke to me in Spanish unless she was angry and yelled out the back window, "Ronaldo!" So otherwise I was Ronnie. And my mother spoke to me in very actually good English. Now, looking back on my life, I wonder, why didn't I pick up on the Spanish culture and the Spanish language? Some of my older siblings did, but I never really learned Spanish. One of the reasons was my father.
Oh, I guess there's something. I'm getting a call from my technical director. What's going on?
There's just some sound issues, just the ruffling of the shirt.
Oh, did you put the microphone on the inside?
I believe so.
Oh, you did.
Oh my God, look at
wow.
that.
It was sounding a little staticky. I didn't know. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay.
The
Thank you, technical
microphone
director.
is backwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will try to make that sound. Oh, if you guys see a cat pop in, don't be afraid. There's an actual cat there. My brother Mickey brought his cat over to my grandparents' place while he's in Ireland for a wedding. So
He's off screen right now. You can't see him, and I'm scratching his head, right? Her head.
yeah,
That's Ditto the cat.
ditto.
Okay,
Okay,
Ditto.
back to it. Bringing her closer so y'all can see if you
I think
can.
there's a Ditto here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. there's a
Can
Ditto
you
there.
see? Can you see ditto?
Okay, Ditto's in the picture. Okay.
Back to it. Back
Now
to
she's licking me. She likes me.
Back to your incredible storytelling. Yes.
Let's go back to my youth because it was very exciting back then. This is something that stuck with me my whole life because I felt a little bit of guilty that as I was growing up into a teenager years and adulthood, I didn't speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. And my Spanish is my heritage because my family, part of it comes from Mexico, from around Guadalajara. And that's my father's side of the family. So my family history left me in a situation where I could appreciate the culture, but as a child, I listened to mostly Western music and rhythm and blues and rock and roll because in my home, my mother was the primary influence. And as I said, she spoke English. This was good for me growing up in East Los Angeles. I went to a school where all the other kids spoke English, and I fit in. And that was a part of the goodness that my mother gave me by making me fit in a white culture. Now this is important because back in the late 40s and early 50s, there was a lot of animosity between whites and the Hispanic community. There were riots. I don't know if you ever heard of the Zoot Suit riots.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people who would call someone like me a wetback or a spick, those kinds of things. So there was some prejudice back in those days. I was grateful when I became a teenager when I realized that I spoke English very well. I didn't have a Spanish accent. And because of that, I could fit in wherever I went without having to deal with a racial issue. So, my mother's side of the family, my aunts, they spoke English clearly, and they even sang songs in English. And also, though, they had a little bit of Spanish influence. They also sang songs in Spanish, but mostly in English. Like I used to say in our earlier meetings, my aunts would sing songs by the Andrews sisters from those swinging years. So I would hear that kind of harmony from my mother's sisters, and it's always nice when you have siblings singing together because they do really nice harmonies, and I grew up with that. So my aunts on my mother's side, they spoke English. Now, my father's side, they all spoke Spanish. Okay, so when I went to see my aunts on my father's side, our conversations were,
Because you didn't. How much Spanish did you speak?
I didn't speak any
Did you even
Spanish.
speak conversational?
No, I never had conversational Spanish. I didn't study Spanish until, I must have been in my 30s, 40s when I started looking at books and decided to learn a little bit about Spanish. I never really had a need to, but this is why I always felt like I was missing something. I was a Hispanic, and I was always running into other Hispanics that were surprised because I didn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
So there was always that issue with me, wishing I had learned Spanish because I felt I missed out. I wasn't bilingual. So this has always been a problem with me, and I was aware of it. It wasn't a bad thing, though. I took it mostly as a good thing because I didn't have to suffer the slings and arrows of racial backlash that was prevalent back when I grew up. So I could fit in most places. And that was goodness for me.
Now, your mom, you didn't really say where her side of the family originated from.
My mom was born in Pasadena. And my mother's family had been living in the California, especially on my grandmother's side, for hundreds of years. So they had in fact, going back in our family tree, which I was doing recently, a lot of the landowners and early settlers of Yorba Linda were a part of my family, the Reyes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So after doing that research, I had an uncle who was helping me out with that, and I found out that some of our relatives on my grandmother's side, which was also my mother's side, were actually very influential Yorba Linda residents a few hundred years ago.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. So she was born in Pasadena, but where was she white? Was she Hispanic?
Oh no, they're Hispanic.
Oh, okay.
They're
But
Hispanic.
what?
They're just Hispanics from Mexico who migrated
Got you.
here.
Okay.
In the days when there were land grants in California, and they had a large ranches here in Yorba Linda. And so that's what I meant. They're Hispanic in their history, but they migrated into California many, many years ago. So they're not just recent immigrants.
Right.
They've been here a long time.
Okay,
On
yeah,
my
that makes more
mother's side.
sense. I thought that you were full Hispanic or
I
full
am.
Mexican.
I
Yeah.
am. Both sides of my family are Hispanic.
Yeah.
And, Hispanic or residents, at least, of this continent for thousands
Right.
of years. Because my mother is descendant of those who originally crossed the land bridge from Asia, okay, over through Alaska and down into what we call the United States now, or America. And so my mother's DNA traces back to the Anasazi Indians who've been here for thousands of years. So in that sense, the women in my mother's line are
A lot of indigenous ties.
yes. She is a descendant of the indigenous people of California and America.
Very cool. See, I feel like not a lot of people, specifically in my immediate family, know those things. They might have heard it or stuff like that, but they don't know of the specifics. And what was the tribe name again?
Anastasi?
Anastasi.
Those are the race of Indians that lived here thousands of years ago. My mother doesn't claim to be a member of a tribe. Like I said,
Oh,
our
gotcha.
family's been integrated into California life here for
Right.
for quite a while. So they don't associate as a tribe.
Right.
That and this points out exactly what I was saying earlier. That by my mother speaking English to me and teaching me proper English, I was able to fit in and not be a member of a tribe or something else.
Right.
I was just a kid down the block. And I hung out with other kids down the block. And California, if any of you know that, has been a melting block. I was raised in a Jewish neighborhood, actually. Boyle Heights, which at the time was primarily Jewish, and it was just transitioning from Jewish to more Hispanic people living in those communities. The Jewish community eventually migrated over toward the Fairfax area in Los Angeles,
Got
and what
it.
was left was mostly the Hispanic populations. Even today, it's mostly Hispanic, I believe. I haven't been back there in a long time, but I believe that East Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, is still a Hispanic area.
I feel like it is. I mean, Julian, you live over in East Los Angeles too, right? Yeah.
I have an amusing story to tell about my grammar school. I didn't know this about Jewish people and Hispanics or Catholics, really what it was, because I was just, in the first grade or whatever. And so I went to school one day, and the class was half empty. There was nobody around. I was there, and there were some other kids there. And we kind of had, we thought everybody was sick. And then the teacher informed us, no, it was a Jewish holiday. So I looked around and I didn't know what a Jewish holiday was, right? I was just a little tyke. Anyway, so that was the first time I found out that I actually lived in a neighborhood that had a lot of Jewish people in it because we were only a few kids left in class.
Oh, that's
and then I
wild.
realized that the church just down the block was actually a synagogue. And my mother, when she talked about neighbors and knowing people, many of the people, her friends, were Jewish people. The fellow that owns the store, the local store, was Mr. Karan. And the people that lived across the street was Sidney Lazarowitz, who was a friend of mine that I grew up with. So it was a Jewish neighborhood, but I didn't know that because I was too young.
Right,
And
to
so-
understand and
so
piece it
it
together.
was good for me because actually I was racially blind.
Interesting.
I didn't get any kind of upbringing that said there's one group of people here and then these people are different.
Right.
Which turns out to be what I guess is bias.
Guess so.
Xenophobia.
Yeah.
People who are different from you aren't quite right. So I grew up with my mother being open about races, and I never got taught in my home that there was a difference of one race to another or someone was better than someone else because of race.
Right.
That was never a topic in my home. So I didn't grow up with that. I didn't realize till later when I went in the military and my friends were all different colors that there was race because one of the first places I was sent to in the military was Biloxi, Mississippi. And for all you people who live down in Mississippi, you know what I'm talking about. When I found out that the restrooms were separate, blacks went here, whites went there. You couldn't sit on a bus with people, white people and black people. You couldn't sit together with them in a restaurant. So I grew up with friends being of all color.
Yeah.
And when I went into the military and was shipped down to the South before civil rights, Okay, this was before
what year?
all of that. It was in the 60s, early 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and it was at the time when everything was really getting brought up to the surface.
It was just starting to be
Yes.
talked about more and more.
Yes, because several things happened. Martin Luther King, segregation,
Yep.
Alabama in the South, black kids going to school with white kids, desegregation, people being bused to schools. All of that stuff started happening when race once again reared its ugly head. And it has been ever since the Civil War. It does it periodically. It's like expansion, contraction. It's like a ripple in the water. Every few 10, 15, 20 years, we go through this backlash. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's been that way ever since the Civil War.
Really?
Yes. We're better off now because now, for instance, we don't hear about lynchings in the South all the time.
Not all the time.
Back in the 40s,
Yeah.
you heard about lynchings all the time. Black people were lynched.
I mean, still happens sometimes,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Back in the 40s, black people and white people couldn't serve in the same army.
Yeah.
They had separate divisions for black and white people so they wouldn't have to fight together.
Jesus.
Our professional sports did not allow black athletes to play with white athletes. This was in the 40s. So I grew up right coming out of that, where the races were suffering from, what do you call it? Racism.
Yeah.
And again, this happened periodically. In the early 1900s, the KKK marched in New York City against blacks, and it was accepted. So every so many years, racism rears its ugly head, and then people get tired of it and they push back. And this is like the 2 steps forward. The last 2 big steps we had were the civil rights movements, when the government finally said, no, you can't do that. It's not right. It's not fair. It's not justice. And so every few years, 20 to 50 years, something erupts.
Yeah.
Right now we're going through what? Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
And this whole business about justice for the races. So it's just a repeat of things that have been going on over the last century. It just doesn't happen all the time. It goes in cycles.
Goes in waves, goes in cycles. That
Yeah.
definitely makes
and
sense.
we gain
it's-
a little bit each time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that really goes to saying how much history repeats itself.
Yeah, and it's not just black and white.
No.
No, we have other races and issues too.
Oh, yeah.
Also sex. The sexes, gender,
Yep.
issues about that.
Yep.
We did not talk about sex and gay people when in the 50s because they were still vilified even by police. So back then, people didn't come out. Now you hear every day, oh, this guy came out, that girl came out. They came out and admitted that they were, because the reason they didn't before was because they were ostracized
Yep.
by a society that insisted that there was something wrong with these people.
Oh yeah, and especially with like conversion therapy and all that other stuff that people would like send them off to or like threaten them with. Like, why would you want to come out? You know? So I think that especially with the newer generations, how accepting for the most part that they are, because there are still quote unquote bad apples in these generations. Not everybody can be fully accepting, and it does have a lot to do with how you're raised. You know.
Like I was raised next to a Japanese family just after they were out of internship, or not internship, they were interned in prison camps.
Internment camps.
Internment camps because of World War II. In my lifetime, I've seen prejudice against Irish, against Jews, against Muslims, against blacks, against Hispanics. So it's not unique.
Yeah.
It's human nature for one group of people to view another people group as being less than or different than them. And all of these fears come up in people, and they fear what they don't know. I was always taught it's hard to hate someone who you know. So if you get to know someone, you judge them by who they are, not by their skin and other issues. You want to judge a person by what you know about them.
Yeah.
Not what color they are. And this is a hard lesson to learn for humans. Anywhere you go in the world, you can just about find 2 groups either racial or religious groups that are opposed to each other on the basis of religion or color or some other such crazy judgment that people make, and they fight. Even Christians fight Christians. Ask the
God,
Irish.
yeah. There are so many different
Ask the Irish.
types of Christians, so to speak. Like Catholicism is a part of Christianity. Isn't Lutheran also a part of Christianity? If I'm not fully mistaken, don't quote me on that.
Yeah, they are.
There's a lot of different types, and especially when people are so rooted in their beliefs, and they can't allow themselves to hear out the other groups and just be kind of respectful to what they have to say and just hear them out. You don't have to agree, but just like hear them out and that kind of stuff. It can turn very ugly
it's
very
intolerance.
fast. Yes.
Intolerance.
Yeah.
You believe what you believe, so you're okay. But the guy who doesn't believe the same, he's not okay.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
So
completely.
that happens a lot. It doesn't just happen to Catholics or to Protestants or to Jews. It happens to everybody because we
over.
all have one thing in common. We're human.
Yeah.
And so it shows up as race, it shows up as religion. It doesn't matter. It's because we're human.
It's like once you take all of the body parts away, you just end up with bones. It's like we're all the same. Who cares? Who cares how anybody lives their life?
But now I can get
love
back to my
people.
heritage because I'm Hispanic.
Yeah. So, you said that your mom never really spoke Spanish to you, but you didn't say anything really about your dad, at least that I could recall.
Yeah, my father didn't speak English.
Oh, at all?
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Very few words. He was not fluent in English. He could maybe get a point across, but he didn't speak conversational English. It was either that or my dad just didn't like to speak. It was one of the two. But anyway, I make light of it now because I had no relationship with my father. My father was an alcoholic, and I don't remember him ever being really kind to me or taking me places or doing things with me. He was almost an absentee father, even though he lived in the same house with us.
Wow.
So I always look at the fact that I don't speak Spanish and my father doesn't really speak English to me. Why did I never learn Spanish? And it dawned on me, he never spoke to me.
Damn.
He never had conversation. He never bothered to spend enough time with me to communicate.
Did he spend time with your siblings?
They have to speak for themselves. But the boys, I would say, the boys in our family, my oldest brother Albert, another brother Mickey, who was older than me, and myself were the three boys.
Oh, you had a brother, Mickey?
My brother.
Mickey.
Yeah,
I've met Mickey. Mike.
Mike, he died of a heart attack about 10, 20 years ago.
Oh, maybe I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Albert.
And Albert was the oldest. Now, the three boys were able to have a relationship of sorts with my father. Boys and their dads, we would talk to him. I learned to I never hated my father for what he was because he wasn't a very good father. But I understood who he was.
It's almost hard to hate somebody that you don't know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I knew my father, and he was still my father, and I could appreciate what he did bring to the family. His family, I loved my father's side of the family, so it wasn't as if it was some total loss. I never knew him. He brought a lot to the party. He just wasn't the main attraction.
Yeah.
So my dad, we really didn't have a really good relationship. Now, because the boys in the family were the type that said, when I grew up, I tried to help my father. Even though he was a drunk, I did whatever I could to help him whenever I could. I still maintained contact with him. I spoke with him. I was kind to him. I didn't hate him. I didn't chew him out or yell at him. He was still my father, and I cared for him as best I could in my relationship with him. My sisters, however, my oldest sister, Arlene, could not deal with my father. She had a totally different view of him. I'm not sure in her life how her relationship developed, but she would not give an inch to my father for anything. She truly, I felt, hated him. Now, he might have earned it. I'm not saying she's wrong.
Sure.
I'm just saying her life and her relationship to my father, since she was older than me, took place in a different time.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't know what
And-
happened before you came along.
Exactly.
So,
I know that I was embarrassed by my father because he was an alcoholic and a drunk and embarrassed me in front of my friends. I can only imagine what my sisters felt.
yeah.
So I can't speak for my sisters. I know that my oldest sister did not like my father at all. Now, like I said, I gave my father what I could. I maintained a relationship with him, and I know that I didn't hate him. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I did what I could for my father. He lived his life. I came finally to the understanding that it was his life. He was punished in his life. He had 6 children and hardly had a relationship with any of them. I figure his punishment was him having to live the life he chose and being rejected and frowned upon by his family and embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
So,
Damn.
So that was my dad, and that was him from the Hispanic side of the family. By that I meant they all spoke Spanish and not English.
Yeah.
Versus my mother's side, which were more acclimated to being in California, United States, and more integrated into the community, the English community.
So your mom and her side of the family, when do you know when they made the move from Mexico to California?
Oh no, it's probably in the 1800s.
Wow. So they, yeah, because I know you said that they were here for a long time, but then your dad, when did his side of the family?
That was about 1917, I think, when my dad
Oh, wow.
immigrated
Okay.
to California. Yeah, and he came from Mexico. His
From
whole family.
Guadalajara?
Yes, from the Guadalajara area.
Gotcha.
A town called Yahualica is the name of the town. Yahualica. And it's
Yahualica.
not too far from Guadalajara. And so that was my father's family. They immigrated from there. Not only his family, but also I have relatives who immigrated to work in the ash mines, the potash mines in near Death Valley in China Lake, Trona. They immigrated about the same time, but they were cousins. So we have a group of Ledesmas, my family, who live in the high desert around Ridgecrest and Trona, who settled there working at the American Potash and Chemical Company.
Wow.
They mined the salt from the dry riverbed, or the dry lakes. China Lake is a dry
Ooh.
lake.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so they mined chemicals, basically. You remember the story?
Maybe not interesting. Oh, that's probably really bad for you.
How
Being
old are
around
you?
that.
Do you remember a term called
I'm almost 23.
20 meal? You remember a product called 20 meal team borax? You remember products called borax?
No, borax.
Borax. Okay. And there used to be a TV show about 20 mule teams, because it took 20 mules to haul a wagon, and the place that those 20 mules went was to these dry lakes to haul chemicals, potash. So our history, the history of the high desert, the 20 mule teams that pull those chemicals out of those dry lakes. Okay, there's a history there, just like you hear about the Pony Express, and you hear about the cavalry, those
Right.
parts of our history in the United States. Well, the 20 mule teams were part of a history where they pull the chemicals out of those places. My family, on my side, my father's side, had our descendants went there also, and today they're still there. And so there's a bunch of Ledesmas running around in the high deserts up there who are part of my family, my extended cousins. And so at the same time, around in the early 1900s, both of those factions of my family moved to California together. So my father's side settled in LA, East Los Angeles, in that area, and my uncle's side or cousin's side, they settled up in the high desert. So that was my heritage from Mexico, from my father's side.
Now, Eric, your son, he lived up in Ridgecrest for a long time, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he ever hang out with your distant or extended family?
Yeah, it's a small world, and that's another whole story for the telling. It just so happened that my son Eric joined the Navy, and he became a submariner. And it was after college, he decided to become a submariner.
Did you have any influence on that? Did he want to do it because you're a veteran or anything like that?
No,
Or he just found it out on his own?
That was his choice, as far as I know. No, I never tried to influence him going in the military. So he wound up going in the Navy, becoming a submariner. The reason this is important is because he worked on nuclear submarines and was a nuclear engineer. So, because he worked on nuclear submarines, when he got out of the Navy, he worked for companies like General Dynamics, and he worked on secret submarine crap. And you know how that is. You know, you work on submarines that have nuclear weapons and stuff on.
Well, Justin works, my oldest brother, he works on secret stuff for the government because he majored in aerospace engineering, and he's a genius. Well, his IQ is above the genius line.
Oh, thank you. Anyway.
Because he gets that from you.
I hope so. And your mom, no doubt. So anyway, Eric got out of the Navy, eventually started working with government contractors working on submarines. So Eric wound up going to places like Virginia to work at, I think, what is it, Portsmouth? Or
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
He goes to where the naval ships go, where the submarines go, Bremerton, Washington, and they go to
like Illinois.
Yeah, and Groton, Connecticut. So there's places where there's submarine bases, where the submarines come in, they go in dry dock, and then technicians go in and work on upgrading their systems, whatever their systems are, and I can't talk about it because I don't know. But anyway, my son, Eric, works on submarines. So, because he works on submarines, he got assigned to the Naval Weapons Station working on testing of things that go on submarines. Anyway, the naval station that he went to is in Ridgecrest, California, and the high desert. Believe it or not, there's not a damn submarine within hundreds of miles of the desert up in the mountains, but they have test sites. And I think just not long ago, somebody died out there in a crash. The Navy pilots go there at the Naval Air Station.
Navy pilots?
Navy pilots go to Ridgecrest Naval Air Station.
Navy is boats and stuff.
Exactly. Well, I'm getting there, girl.
Okay. I'm ahead of the game, apparently.
Well, the thing is, these Navy pilots, they have to practice dropping bombs. So guess where they go to drop bombs? To the desert. Because there's hundreds and thousands of square miles where you see nothing but sagebrush and jackrabbits. So the Navy uses that area as a testing ground for munitions. It's a naval weapons station. So whenever they make up a new bomb or a new rocket or some other crazy military thing, and the Navy has to put it on an airplane and try to shoot it at something, where do they go to test these weapons? They go to the Naval Weapons Station in Ridgecrest, California. Now, my son Eric just happens to have a site near Ridgecrest in the desert, off where people can't see it, of course, because it's secret.
Duh.
Yeah. It's on the Naval Weapons grounds. And he did some work there for a while, working in testing of naval weapons systems while he was there. That is how Eric got to where my family is, in the middle of nowhere. Just
I always wondered that, yeah.
Now, when he went there, his name is Ledesma. And it just so happened that everybody around there knows who Ledesmas are. So yes, he got to meet the other Ledesmas in the area of Ridgecrest. And now, while he was there, he spent time with them. And his own son, Noah, is still in Ridgecrest. And those sides of the family are once again united because they're in the same location.
That's cool. I like that.
And it was all by serendipity.
What a great word. I love that.
But that's not
word.
where it stops.
Okay, continue. I didn't tell you to stop. Continue.
That's not where it stops. There was another member of the family who wound up going to Ridgecrest through serendipity, who met our relatives there and didn't know they were there.
Who?
It was my wife, Gail.
Really?
Gail was working as a VP of she was what do you call it?
HR?
She was consulting.
Oh.
Okay. She was consulting, and she'd get hired by different hospitals to come and consult and work in human resources.
Okay.
That was her
it was HR.
that
I
was
told
her
you.
profession. Yeah, she's in human resources. So the hospital in Ridgecrest needed a director in human resources because they had lost theirs, or they needed someone temporary. So she came in to consult to that hospital in Ridgecrest. And when she did so, she found out that as soon as she said her name, my name, Ledesma, people said, Ledesma? I said, hey, do you know Andy Ledesma? And she said, well, yeah, that's my husband's cousin.
Why, yes, I do.
By serendipity, Gail from Missouri, we lived in Missouri at the time, all the way from Missouri, got assigned to a job in Ridgecrest, California, where my relatives lived out in the middle of nowhere in the desert.
So she went to California and left you back in Missouri?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it's a consulting business. When someone needs a consultant someplace, she went to Washington.
Just for like the weekend or week or whatever?
Yeah, it was for months. You know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a consulting job.
All right.
Hey, we move, we do things.
It's true. Hey, you move, you do things. I get it.
That's another thing about me that I found out over the years. Gail and I are adventurous people.
Yeah.
We have lived in many, many different places. Some people spend.
I must get that from you, because I know that I want to live in a lot of different places.
That could be true.
Yeah.
Most people that I know that are older can talk about growing up in a place and living there most of their lives.
I could not.
I still have friends who were born and raised in the Los Angeles area, and they're still here. They've traveled, maybe gone places, but they've never lived in other places. I've lived in many different states, many different situations, and done many different things. And it takes a little bit of chutzpah to decide to uproot yourself, leave your jobs, go someplace else, start anew or something different, and live a different life. I've lived several different professions in several different ways in several different areas of the country and been exposed to different cultures. And this is a part of...
That's what's so beautiful about it, though.
I know, that's why I can look back now. And we've been talking about me having a terminal illness.
Yeah.
And these are the few years I have left in my life. But I can look back on my life and say, I've had a good life. I don't have any regrets. I've done so many things that it's hard to even think. When I do stop and think about it, I say, I couldn't have done all that. But actually I did. And Gail was with me. So she's witness. I did these things.
Have you ever sat down and like made a list of all of the things that you've done?
Not in that sense. I think I've talked about it before. When we would take long trips from the San Francisco Bay Area down to LA to visit family, we would talk about goals, things we wanted to do. And we would always talk about a year, the year past, and 5 years forward. That's about the range of things we looked at. So we always looked at things, and we started talking one time about we need to get out of the rat race. You know, everybody says, "Oh, here we feel like the gerbils on the
hamster wheel or whatever."
Hamster wheel. Yeah, we feel like we're on the hamster wheel. And after a while, when you're working in high tech and a lot of pressure, you feel like, God, I just wish I could get out of this. I'm getting burned out.
Yeah, I can't imagine that personally.
So those are the kind of discussions we had, and those are some of the reasons why we discussed things. We worked out a plan on how we could get from where we were and get away from it and reestablish ourselves in a different situation. So we actually did that.
Yeah.
So that's a part of our work together, is that we were not afraid to spend a little bit of time apart and move and change and develop.
Would you say that I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but how many places have you lived in your entire life?
I mean, different houses or cities. Probably lived around Washington, Nebraska, North Carolina. I mean, we didn't live in North Carolina. Missouri, Colorado.
You lived in Montana at one point.
You
lived in Minnesota? I hear Lady Gail from the kitchen.
Yeah, Minnesota too. Now in the military, I lived in, like I said, I was in the South.
Yeah,
Texas.
Mississippi for a while, Texas.
And I traveled around a lot and visited places, but we lived in those different states. Yeah,
like 8-ish.
Yeah,
8-ish places.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's awesome though. And Pasadena. Wait, did you already say LA? Because you grew up in Pasadena.
No, I grew up in Los Angeles, East Los Angeles. Born in East.
Yeah, Los Angeles. So 9.
Yeah, I was
That's
actually
a lot
born
of places.
in Boyle Heights.
Boyle Heights. Hey, I know Boyle Heights.
Yeah, it's right down just outside the LA River there, right close to the LA downtown.
I love it. So you were born in Boyle Heights?
Yeah, on Savannah Street, right across the street from the church.
Oh,
I was born at home.
I gotta visit that, like where that is sometime. That would be interesting.
A doctor from the White Memorial Hospital, actually, I think it's on, I forget what street it's on. Maybe Brooklyn. It was on Brooklyn Street, which is now, I think, Martin Luther King or Cesar Chavez.
Oh, they changed it.
Yeah, did it change it? I was a doctor from the hospital came out and certified my birth, and I was born at home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How was that? Well, I guess you don't remember, but.
I do not remember. Like I said, my earliest memories were about 1949. It's my earliest memory that I know what was happening.
What year were you born?
45.
45. So about when you were 4 years old?
About when I was 4 years old,
Okay.
I had memories of things that happened that were significant. Yeah.
All right. Well, now I want to kind of change gears a touch. Still talking about like history, family, heritage, culture-ish. What kind of stories were passed down through your family? Do you have any?
My father would drink.
This is
and
an
when
interesting way to start out a story.
It's the truth. I mean, I had very few things in my family that I could laugh about or joke about. This is one of them. It's everybody's got something like this, a crazy old uncle or whatever. But it was my dad. My dad would drink, and sometimes when my dad would drink, his tongue would get loose. Okay, and that's putting it mildly. So he'd start
Okay.
yelling and screaming and singing, and he talked all about Pancho Villa. And the days on the ranch and the soldiers would come and Pancho Villa would ride, and he would just go on and on about those fantasizing about the Mexican Revolution and all of those things that were going on when he was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. So he told stories, drunken stories, by the way, of knowing Pancho Villa, riding with Pancho Villa, or stuff like that, which was not really true, but he experienced growing up in a time during that revolution. So that was his
Perspective on it.
yeah. So he would go on about yelling about Pancho Villa, just drunken stuff.
Yeah.
But it was looking back on it now, it was kind of hilarious. But this is one of the reasons I didn't hate my dad, was because
He was
how could you hate
entertaining.
someone like that? he had an opportunity in life like all of us do.
Sure.
He blew it. He blew it. He had 6 great kids. He blew it. He could have had much more in his life with his family. He blew it. And this is why I feel bad for him, because as a human being, he suffered.
Yeah.
He suffered. He was not a happy man. And
Yeah.
I think that's why he took to the bottle. He was not a happy man.
That would make sense.
And it's sad to see any one of your family members go through that. It wasn't just my father. There were other people in the family who had hard times.
Sure.
And who you had to feel for and care about. And my brother Mickey, he almost went that route. He was arrested for DUI and was drinking and getting crazy, and then one day he stopped. Yeah, my brother Mickey just stopped. He went to AA, quit drinking, and straightened his life out. Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. And I've never been so proud of anyone as I was of my brother for
Good
doing.
for him.
Yeah, because it was so sad to see.
Yeah, it's really sad watching somebody go through,
So my brother turned out to be a hero of sorts for me, and especially when I found out one day that he had run the Boston Marathon. And I said, what?
Damn.
My brother ran the Boston Marathon? And I think as a part of him cleaning himself up, he took to running.
I think a lot of people who go through addictions and stuff end up doing like running or exercise or turning to that, because it's like a way to release endorphins into your system, and also it's something else to keep your mind busy on something else, which is, I think, a good outlet for a lot of people. So it's not necessarily surprising, but good for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, he did good. He did good. And he even did things like went to Africa. Yeah, I think he ran a marathon there.
Just because? Because he wanted to?
I might have been because of a religious missionary kind of thing, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Many of our family members, especially on my father's side, very religious, very, very Catholic.
Is that part of the reason why you think you're not religious today? Is because you were kind of raised around so much of it, or?
No. I never looked badly on my family for being Catholic or Christian. Part of that was they made sure I went to a Catholic school. I got a good education. I learned about the Bible and all of the things that other Catholics learned about. And I was able to take that information and those values, by the way, and use those in my life.
Yeah.
For instance, I can help someone out and be a good person because I think that's the right thing to do. Or Or I could help a person and say, I did it because Jesus told me or God told me. I'm the kind of person that says I did it because it's the right thing to do.
Ditto.
And so for me, it's about values.
Yeah.
And what I was taught as a Catholic, to love your neighbor, not to lie, all of the things that we learn as kids, the 10 Commandments, the 2 Great Commandments, and all of that, to me, what stuck was Jesus was a kind person. He cared about others, and he taught people to love, not to hate. And that was the key to Christianity for me. Be a good person. And I always thought on my tombstone, all I ever wanted was to say, here lies a good man. Because that's what I was taught.
Oh, I love that.
So a lot of people say, oh, I did it because God. I don't do that. I did it because it's the right thing to do.
I definitely empathize with that. I think that's a lot of what I took out of being raised so strictly Catholic, because I would go with my mom to, to church every Sunday. And then I would go off into like the Sunday class that they send all the kids off to, and they're talking about, I think, the gospel, or I don't know. It's been so long since I've been to church, and I'm not religious to this day. But those are kind of the same values that I took from all of those different classes. That, he was a good guy. He was really nice all the time, very generous. Never really got angry or anything like that. Except for, I think there was like one time in the Bible, but anyway.
The money changers.
Something like that. But yeah, I definitely agree, and that's kind of how I live my life, and I'm glad that, I had some of those lessons taught to me, because I think it did shape me to be a good person. But there are also a lot of not so amazing things about, the Catholic religion. But I am grateful for those specific types of, things that it taught me.
I always look at it this way as far as the religion goes. The actual church and their teachings are good. Unfortunately, like earlier I was talking about human beings being what they are, human beings turn things around to suit their own narrative. So the Bible might say one thing, but a minister someplace would interpret it in the way they want to. And so they do things that, just like the Catholics and the Protestants in Ireland, they were willing to kill each other, even though claiming both to honor the ways of Christ.
Right.
Now, common sense tells you that makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. How they can kill each other and still claim to be followers of Christianity, and the reasons they killed each other were totally crazy. Okay, so this exists all over. Now, like I said, it's not just Catholics or Protestants, it's everybody. So you get any group together and somebody will decide they're better or different than others, and then set off on a campaign or a crusade to make them right. And it happens all the time. There's a lot of people who spend so much energy angry and persecuting gay people.
Yeah.
To what end? I would look at a person persecuting gay people and say, well, what does it get you? What are they doing? Are they attacking your family? Why are you attacking them?
It's like they're just living life. They're just living life.
There's that kind of stuff going on where people have a belief that is so ingrained in them that gets them so angry that they're willing to attack other people, and punish other people for something that is different than them, that they have no right or reason to do it. That only their own anger and fear generates this animosity toward other people who are just as good, have just the same good values, who would lend you a hand if you needed it.
Absolutely.
Who would love you if you gave them a chance.
Yeah.
So that's just the way we are. I think you just have to be aware of it. And I've said this several times on the show. You don't judge a person by what they say. You judge them by what they do.
Yeah.
If they treat you kind, they're a kind person. If they talk to you about being kind and then treat someone cruelly, they're a cruel person. I know the difference. Don't tell me you're kind and then go be mean to this person over here.
Yeah.
That's not kindness. So that's called hypocrisy. It's they'll say, if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are throwing stones have just as much sin or evil in their souls as everyone else. So we're all in the boat together.
True, true.
And if you really want to love your neighbor, then next time you look at a neighbor, smile, regardless of
Yes, I agree. I think people should smile at each other more in public. I feel like there's this, I don't know what it is, but there's just this societal view that like, oh, we can't look at each other while we're walking down the street. It's like, oh, look at, I don't know. I'm a very friendly, like, I don't know, nice person. At least I'd like to think so. And I tend to try to, well, Julian is behind the camera shaking his head no. And I tend to try to just like, you know, give a quick glance and a quick smile.
No.
Like nothing past that. It's just like, you're just friendly and nice to people.
No, you can't do that all the time, though.
Not all the time.
No.
Yeah.
People
yeah.
will look at you like you're weird.
Oh, I don't care. I'm weird and I know it. But anywho, I do want to ask one more fun question. No, it's a genuine fun question. What recipes were passed down through your family?
Recipes?
Yeah, because you love to cook.
Yeah.
So let's kind of end on that question.
Okay, I got 3 things that come to mind.
Yes.
My brother Mickey taught me how to cook potatoes. The way
Okay.
he there's 1,000 ways to cook potatoes.
Of course.
Anybody who likes potatoes and who's a cook understands that there's 1,000 ways to cook potatoes. My brother
so
Mickey taught me
many.
a way that I love, and I'll never forget it. And I always cook potatoes that way when I get a chance. Not always, but I do because I like them that way.
So how do you
those
cook 'em?
potatoes. Okay. All right.
Give us the spark notes.
Okay. Potatoes can be cooked fast, it can be cooked slow. If you cook them under high heat, they turn brown. Like French fries, you cook them under high heat and the skins get brown. Now when the skin gets brown, the flavor changes. Okay. So the brownness on the potatoes controls the depth of the flavor of fried potatoes. Now, if you cook the potatoes slow and you cook them with a cover and they have a tendency to steam or braise, they don't get brown, they stay white, but they get soft. Then the flavor then comes from the pepper and the salt that you use on the potatoes. My brother used heavy pepper, and it gave them a bite. And that bite of pepper with the right amount of salt and the potatoes cooked, and they're diced potatoes, diced about a ½ inch, okay, about that big dice of potatoes. So they're diced potatoes, salt, pepper, that's it.
Have I had these potatoes?
Pardon me?
Have I had these potatoes?
I don't know.
I don't know if I
usually cook them
have.
for breakfast.
I don't know if I have.
I'll cook them for you.
You gotta cook them for me.
Okay, that's one. Now the other 2 things that I can cook, that I learned to cook and I cook all the time, are rice and beans. One thing very Hispanic about me is that I grew up in a house where almost every day we had rice and we had beans, because rice and beans together made up a full protein. And we bought rice and beans by the sack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back then, even people, you probably heard of flour sacks, dresses made out of flour sacks. You ever hear people talk about flour sacks?
Yeah.
Okay. And flour sacks were used around the house because flour came in a sack, but you didn't want to throw this cotton sack away. It was
Right.
cloth. So families back then used the flour sack to make garments and other things out of after they were used to empty the flour out.
That makes sense. I would do that.
So-
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Flour sacks, but now flour sacks weren't a part of a rich, wealthy culture.
No.
They were a part of the lower class culture.
Yeah.
You know-
Which is dumb, but
Yeah, if you had to make clothes out of flour sacks or other household items out of flour sacks, it was a dead giveaway that your family was poor. Okay. Anyway, so we had rice
I
and
look
beans.
at it as environmentalists.
Yeah, we were early environment, and we had brown paper sacks too for everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so rice and beans. I had to learn to cook rice, so I called my mom on the phone when I was old enough to do that, to ask her the recipe for Spanish rice. So my mom got on the phone and I said, Mom, how do you cook rice? What do I do? Well, I don't know, you just put some rice in the pan and fry it. Mom, how much? I don't know. And she says, well, a cup. I said, okay, Mom. How much salt? I don't know. I just put salt. I said, Mom, how much onions? You know, onions. I don't know. I just cut some onions up and put them in. So it was such a struggle to get the recipe out of my mother for rice.
That's
she made it every
hilarious.
damn day, and she couldn't give me the recipe. And so I didn't realize at the time, because then I was a cook who cooked from the recipe.
Right.
If I didn't have a recipe, I couldn't do a damn thing, because I had to have a recipe to cook something. My mother cooked by rote. She cooked it so many times she didn't think about it. She didn't blink an eye.
Yeah,
She
just secondhand.
threw
Yeah.
this in here, threw
Second
that
nature.
in there, and it came out the same every damn time.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, if she cooked it every day, that makes
yeah.
sense.
And,
Yeah.
and the beans were the same. My mother made beans and she couldn't tell you how she made them. Not, she couldn't write it down anyway.
Right.
She could try to describe it to you, but she couldn't give you amount. Now, in my cooking now, I actually go through the trouble of, when I decide to cook something, I'll get ingredients together and I will actually measure the amount that I put in by putting it in my hand first and then measuring what I put in my hand. Or by getting 4 cups of water and pouring water till it's done and then looking how much I have left so I know how much I put in. So I began to write recipes down using measurements that other people could follow. So I went from reading recipes to writing recipes.
You should have your own cookbook.
Yes, it's totally different. Writing recipe is different
Yeah.
than learning how to cook something, okay?
Oh, it
It
is,
might seem
yeah.
the same, but it's not.
No, definitely.
So the rice and the beans I had to learn. The thing that I never really learned, that I tried, that I didn't master and I didn't understand till now, till I found out about baking and dough. My mother was the one person in our whole family, both sides, was famous for one thing: tortillas. My mother, every day, like we have bread, I didn't have bread when I was a kid really much, so much as I had tortillas every day.
Ooh.
Okay, so we had tortillas. And the story of the tortillas is this: we were poor. My mom, for supper, would go down to the store and she'd buy a 2-pound sack of flour.
Okay.
2-pound sack of flour. She'd bring it home and throw it on the counter and make a hole in the middle. And then she'd start putting her ingredients in: the lard, the salt, the baking powder. Okay, and those were the ingredients. Water. Okay, and then she started mixing it. And then she'd get it to a certain consistency, pouring water in. She'd get it. It's just like people who make pasta. They do the same thing. My mother did that. Then she got it, started moving it into a dough, and started kneading it, and kneading it, and kneading it. And then pretty soon, the little dough ball glistened, just the right shape. It just glistened, you know. You could see it.
It's
It was just
perfect.
perfect. And then she started squeezing out little balls. Every damn ball was the same size. Okay, she did that over
Like
and over.
clockwork.
And then she did the whole thing, and all the balls were lined up. She covered them, and then she started forming the balls. Okay, and then she got her little rolling pin and started rolling them, and they came out round. I mean round, not but round. My mom made them all the same exact size. And then she had the iron skillet, the coma, on the stove, just the right temperature. And she had that skillet on there, and she'd be rolling. Then she'd get it, she'd put it on the skillet, and then she'd get another one to start rolling. And then while she was rolling, she'd be turning the one on the skillet, okay? And she'd keep rolling, and then she'd take the one off skillet when it was done and put it in the stack, and then she'd put the next one on. It was like an assembly
She had a
line.
system.
Like an assembly, and she never blinked. She pulled those things off that hot griddle, and like never missed one. And I counted, you know. I would go over there and watch her, and I
counted.
I count the number of seconds that she'd left the tortilla on the griddle until she turned it. It went 3 times. Okay. Anyway, so my mom made the tortillas. Now the thing about a tortilla is, if you've ever eaten a tortilla, you understand. Because in my family, the tortilla was used like a fork or a spoon.
Sure.
Yeah. You used
Yeah.
the tortilla and you cut a piece off and you used it to grab your food with. You ate
Yeah.
with your hands, okay?
Yeah.
In order
That's
to
where I
do
get it
that,
from.
the tortilla had to be flexible. It had to be flexible and also not get soggy if you put it in a liquid.
Yeah.
It had to be perfect consistency, and that's the brilliance of what my mother did.
I love a good
Those
tortilla.
tortillas were perfect. They were perfect in all the ways it took to eat something and enjoy it. So that was my mom. She made perfect tortillas. They were never hard or brittle or cracked or flake, nothing. They were just perfect. And you could eat with them, and they made your food so much better because they were perfection.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember my mom for. I tried making tortillas. I got pretty good, but I could never.
They just weren't the same?
Yeah, I got to a point where I looked at the time invested in actually doing that in this modern age, and I found brands of tortillas at the store that were good enough that I didn't have to. So I buy the particular brands for their flexibility and their ease of heating. And I usually heat them over an open fire. Because it didn't come out.
No, that's what I do too.
It's more trouble. But anyway, that's the one thing I wish I had as a young person learned to do that I never really mastered. And that all comes with baking. The baking skills I learned in kneading and letting bread rise and all of those things involved with baking. Those were some of the same skills my mother used in her dough making. And anyone who makes dough around the world knows those things. They understand gluten and how it works when you work it. And so my mother, because she did it every day, she was a female in her family, grew up making tortillas for the family. So by the time she made tortillas for me, she was like, she could do it blindfolded.
Yeah.
She would just pump them out like nothing. And everybody loved my mother for that, and they would always say, I want some of her tortillas.
Oh, I wish I had some of her tortillas.
And my mom thought nothing of it.
No, yeah.
Now, I've also talked about my mother and other things in cooking. She couldn't cook worth a damn. I'm serious. I mean, the things that she cooked that were staples. I said, well, you understand, when you get older and you look at cultures, you look at a culture and you say, what do they eat every day? You know, like people eat rice every day.
Yeah.
In a lot of places. People eat pasta every day in places of the world. People eat fish every day in places of the world. You take a look at the things they eat every day, and they cook every day, and they cook those to perfection. Because it's a part of their life and their existence, their daily existence. Something you do
it's gotta be
every
good.
day, and you have to eat it every day. You do your damnedest at making sure it tastes good.
Absolutely.
You know, instead of junk food. Now, some people, they don't know how to cook.
Right.
They don't want to cook. Cooking can be a joy, or it could be slavery. It depends on your attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been movies about it. But food made without love is really Cheerios.
I guess that's one way to put it. But there's nothing better than a fresh tortilla. Oh, so good.
Yeah, and if you ever have the opportunity to go to one of these restaurants where they have a little lady there making fresh corn tortillas, you better get some.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so I guess we'll end this episode with talking about how you're feeling and give an update on your health. So give us a rundown. I noticed you took your oxygen right before. All right.
I'll take it again right now.
Yeah.
Good news. Last month, my doctor asked me, because I was coughing a lot, and it was getting really bad. I talked to my doctor about it, and she said, well, perhaps if you try some of the steroids, that it could have side effects, but it could also make you cough less. And so last month I started on some steroids. Oxygen's good, by the way.
Nice.
Last month I started on taking some steroid pills. And this month, now that I'm looking back, my coughing has gotten better.
I noticed that, yeah.
So my coughing has gotten better. I still cough, but before it was getting to be miserable.
Yeah.
And my coughing has improved. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I thought, well, maybe it's improved. But I said, not enough time yet. You know, you can't be too quick on your body changing. So it's been about a month now, and I'm looking back and saying, okay, I am feeling like I'm coughing less. So it could be attributed to those pills, maybe not, but it looks like a positive sign that I've noticed some change. Gail has noticed some change.
That's good.
Yeah. So, am I still sick? Yeah. I still have bad oxygen?
Yeah.
Am I coughing as much? Not so much. So,
That's good,
I'm
though.
feeling good about that. Even though the coughing wasn't painful, it was definitely a nuisance.
Yeah.
I'm still hoarse most of the time. I've got some stuff in my, phlegm in my throat and all, but it's not as bad as it was. So I'm glad for that. So that's good news. The bad news is ever so slightly, my oxygen level is dipping lower when I get up to any activity. Only once in the last month it's gotten in the 60s, and then I just had to get oxygen right away.
Is that the lowest it's been?
Yeah, 60s is the lowest I've been, but that's not good.
Yeah.
Regular is 89 to 100 is normal. In the 80s is not good. In the 70s, definitely not good. In the 60s, stop what you're doing, get some oxygen. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I've noticed that I don't have as much stamina. Not stamina. I don't have. I can't do as much
Just
before.
hear my grandma in the background saying, yeah.
Yeah, she's eavesdropping back there. Get back in the kitchen, woman.
Hey, no, we don't tolerate that here. No. Bad grandpa.
This is her week. She's cooking this week. We alternate weeks. I cooked last week. This week is her week to cook. So I'm here having fun, and she's in this kitchen slaving away.
Oh, I'm having fun.
She's having fun, she says.
She's faking it. You know.
Today I'm having fun.
She says she is having fun.
She's faking it.
Alrighty, and
I've heard that
how's your mental health?
I'm doing pretty. I can still laugh.
Yeah.
I can still laugh. So my mental health is okay. Oh, that's the other thing.
You started on antidepressants, right? Or something
Yeah,
like
that's the
that.
other thing. I started on antidepressants, and I didn't think I needed them. But Gail says, "No, I'm getting them to be Mr. Crotchety." So I've been losing my temper, barking, or whatever I do when I get upset. So last month we talked to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed some antidepressant. So I said, okay, all right, I'll take the antidepressant. So am I in a decent mood? Yeah, pretty much. Do I still yell and accuse her of terrible things? Yeah. But
Nobody's
I don't know,
perfect.
Gail, is it as bad as it was last month?
She says no.
She said
no.
She said no. She said no.
No.
But he's taking a very low amount, so he needs to up it.
Oh, he says, but I do need to up it.
Yeah. Yeah, Ditto's been here like the whole time. People who are just listening, you are missing out. You got to tune into the YouTube version of this that has the video, because this cat has been here like the whole time. Oh, it's beautiful. Well, anyway, on that note, leave your friends, family, and fans with one thing that would always be said in your house growing up.
Welcome.
Welcome. Bienvenidos. All right, and on that note, this has been the unedited, unfiltered, pure and real take. I think actually this time, I don't think I have to cut this at all. But from the perspective of Captain Ron Ledesma, you have been watching According to Captain Ron's Record. I am Kayla Marie Coates signing off.
Granddaughter. Grandfather. Then you can tell us apart.
And say goodbye to your friends, family, and fans.
Oh, hey. Goodbye, everyone. I'll be here next time.
Yeah. What's your
Join
name?
us.
What's your name?
Captain Ron. On the pirate ship, Pinata.
Pinata. We're all signing out. See you in a couple weeks. Bye.